I noticed that I started to have like some unusual symptoms, which, I've always been very healthy, very athletic. Even at school, I was very active in playing tennis. I weight trained every single day. I was in my nutrition program, so I ate very well, and I've always maintained a pretty healthy lifestyle. So it was very odd for me to start getting sick. So some of the symptoms I started to experience were very mild at the time, but it definitely was unusual for me. So the very first thing I noticed was I started to lose my pigment, and it like spread from like my arm and all the way down, pretty much my whole body. I started losing pigment. I started to have really bad like night sweats, and like not like, a little bit of sweat. Like I was literally having to change my sheets because I was just sweating just like crazy. And I did that pretty much like every single night for like 2 weeks. And I felt like I had the flu and I could not get rid of it. I'm like, what is going on with me? So I'm like, okay, I went to my doctor and they're like, oh, you're just stressed out, you're in school, so you'll be fine. So they actually prescribed me anxiety medication and antidepressant medication. So I knew that I was not depressed. I knew that I was sick, and that's why I was depressed, not the other way around. So I noticed that I was still having all the other symptoms. Then I started to notice I was having like muscle weakness. I was fainting at work. I started waking up some mornings and I wasn't able to get out of the bed, like my legs were losing the ability to walk. I was losing my ability to talk. I would have like small seizures in between conversations with people, or I was having issues finding the word. I would literally be stuck just staring at the person trying to figure out what word I'm trying to say. So that's when I really started to try to zone in and really figure out what was wrong with me, because something was really wrong at this point. I was seeing arthritis specialists, I was seeing endocrinologists, internists. No one could figure out what was wrong. I had MRIs done, EKGs done, muscle conductivity tests done. No one knew. Only thing that was like coming up was like, some markers of inflammation and things like that. So I was convinced that I was gonna die at this point because no doctor could figure out what was wrong. I was just losing weight. I got down to like 98 pounds. I just couldn't keep anything down. I just knew like I had to figure out what was going on. And this was the first time that I actually came up to the front of the church to meet with Bishop. And I asked him to pray for me and to help me actually find out what was wrong with me, because I knew that I was sick and doctors just thought that it was all in my head. They were prescribing me antidepressant medication. I would go to doctors, they would say, just try working out, try seeing a therapist. I knew it was not in my head. I knew something was wrong. And and he prayed with me that day. And so shortly, I want to say 2 weeks after that, after I actually met with Bishop the first time, I met with an infectious disease specialist. So they did a lot of blood work on me, and they noticed some odd things with my cells, and they wanted me to go and get a Lyme's disease test. So I had never heard of Lyme's disease, and they asked me if I ever been bitten by a tick or if I had a bullseye rash. I remember being bit by ticks lots of times. So I met with another infectious disease specialist. It was actually a Lyme literate physician, and they specialized just in Lyme's disease. So she had told me about a testing center in California called IGenix, and that's the top Lyme facility in the United States. So I sent my blood over to the IGenix lab in California, and it takes like a month actually to get your results back. So I was still pretty sick at this point. So my results came back, and I was positive for Lyme's disease. So my doctor told me that I had the Lyme, some other co-infections, and she also told me I was pregnant. So that was a big shocker. So me and my husband, we were expecting our first child, so I was concerned how that was going to affect my child. So she did tell me that I would just have to be on antibiotics throughout my pregnancy, and my baby should be fine. So that's when I started treatment pretty aggressively at this point. I was on about 10 medications. They made me pretty sick, but I felt better than how I was feeling without the medication. So I continued to do that up until my daughter was born. She was born very healthy, so that was great. That was a blessing. And I had actually met with a cardiologist, and my heart had got worse, and they told me I had mitral valve prolapse. So it seemed like the Lyme was still kind of being pretty aggressive on my heart and on my gut, my stomach and things. So I had to see another physician. So after a lot of research, I found the Spinagle Wellness Institute in Oldsmar, Florida. I knew that was, somewhere that may be good for me to go. The only issue with that was the cost associated with going to this center. So it would cost me about $40,000 cash just for 6 weeks of treatment at this facility. So before coming to the center, I had actually asked for prayer from Bishop again. This was kind of during the phase where we were kind of raising the money to try to get to the center. I knew that it would be tough trying to raise $40,000, but Bishop prayed for me again, and somehow, some way, I raised the money to go. I had got one really large donation from an anonymous person. I don't even know who gave it to me, but the money just kept coming and coming, and I ended up raising the money to go. So I noticed 3 weeks in that I was literally feeling like myself. So I didn't even feel like I needed the 6 weeks, but they continued, to treat me. And I know for sure that if I would have not went to this center, that I probably wouldn't be here today. Where am I now? So I'm definitely, I want to say 90% back to how I was feeling before I got sick. So I'm healed, and I know it was God. I mean, I haven't felt this good since I was in college, and it just feels good to be able to wake up in the morning and have energy to play with my daughter, have energy to be able to work out again, and not be stuck in the bed for weeks just from like an hour workout. I'm just so happy to be back to my normal self. Bishop, just throughout this process, even down to he wanted to know the name of the center, the wellness center I was going to, all the doctors that were treating me. He wanted to be very involved with everything that was going on with my treatment and my progression. He prayed for me. He prayed every single day for a month, just specifically for what was going on, with me at the treatment center. He prayed for my doctors, and he was even calling, my family members, just checking on my progress, and just everyone here at the ministry. They've been just so supportive and just so loving, and I feel such a family, community here, and even people, I had never met, they were trying to, is there anything that they could do for me, or, everyone has just been so supportive during this time, and I'm just so blessed to be a part of this ministry. From the very lowest point, he brought me up out of that, and I know it had to be God. and I'm so happy to be back.